Hi all, welcome back to the Spruce Gate Modeling. Today I will be painting the Dragon 135th M1A1HA that I built earlier. For those of you who remember, I was not a fan of the kit, but I am looking forward to painting it. And as any good build, this starts with primer. I'm using a light gray Vallejo primer. I am out of black primer, and I am using this instead. I'm not sure how this would actually have ended up looking over black primer. I think it might have made the post shading that I'll do later a little bit more clear, but gotta make do. So now I'm going to go over the whole thing with my base coat, which is a mix of Iraqi sand and dark sand, mostly Iraqi sand. Um, I'd say it's probably a 3 to 2, or sorry, a two thirds Iraqi sand, 1/3 dark sand ratio. Although you can add a little bit more Iraqi sand than that, um, and you can basically just change it based on how faded you want the paint to look. Uh, and I just cover the whole thing in that before, and you get a little something like this. As I stated earlier, I will now be post shading. The way that I post shaded this was I basically just added a little bit more Iraqi sand for the second layer of paint and went over a lot of the tank, almost all the corners, and most of the raised stuff was hit with this passover. Um, Here you can see that I'm doing it above the upper skirts. Um, and then I'm also going to add a little bit of a depth to the skirts by taking it and spraying some of the corners of it, give a little bit of tonal variation. My brushwork is not the great, and this paint is a little bit thin that I'm using, as I'm sure you can see in the video. So yeah, try not to make that mistake. I did end up fixing it in the end though. Um, this next layer is significantly more. I'd say that this is mostly dark sand at this point, with just a drop of Iraqi sand added. Um, and this is only for the very edges that I want the sunlight to be catching. Um, this isn't actually significantly lighter than the other things. I just wanted a subtle effect from the post shading. Um, and I think it would have stood out more had I actually used that black primer that I wanted to. Um, Here you can see that I'm hitting some of the edges. You can also see some tide marks from where the paint was a little bit thin here. Again, I did end up fixing that in the end, but try not to make that mistake the first time around. Alright, now that I'm done with post shading, I'm going to be taking a enamel wash. I'm going to be hitting all of the details with it. This is pretty light overall, but I did apply a little too much in some areas, and I had to go back in with a Q-tip to take the excess off so that it didn't look really, really strange. Um, this is important with an enamel wash because, I don't know, I found that it looks really weird if you don't do that. Now, I'm going to be taking some dark gray. I'm going to be painting all the exposed metal bits. That is the machine guns, as well as the cable on the side. I was very careful this step. The machine gun mounts are a little bit weirdly shaped. And I'm also going to be getting the smoke grenade launcher, which is a black rubber. That is an exposed metal, but it's the color will work for it, especially after I add highlights to the guns to make them stand out a little bit more. Um, Again, very careful on the smoke grenade launchers because it is an abrupt transition, and very careful on the cables because they are thin and you don't want random black marks on your tank. Um, the 50 cal with the photo etch that I used looks pretty decent, although I could have done a better job attaching some of the photo etch. Definitely not the best 50 cal in the world, um, but I'm pretty happy with it. And again, just a dark gray, and we'll be adding the highlights later. All right, now I'm going to be taking an olive drab, and I'm going to be painting all of the ammunition containers. Uh, I'm not sure how accurate this color is, but I like the nice contrast that it gives to the tan base coat. Um, Careful here not to spill out over onto the machine guns and the base coat. Again, that wouldn't be great. I don't want to have to repaint any of this if possible. I am now going to be adding a very, very light dark sand and ivory mix to areas that I want to be chipping. This will simulate some of the worn paint around chipped areas, um, and I will leave some of this lighter paint actually untouched to give some more depth to the chips, make them look more realistic. I'm going pretty heavy on the ring here because the machine gun moves on the ring. Lots of wear there. Just use common sense here, edges in areas that might end up being more worn. I'm now going to be taking a black brown, very dark brown, and I'm going to be chipping some of the areas that I hit with the super light color um, in an irregular and seemingly random pattern. That's the goal, to give it a very, very nice chipping effect. I'm going pretty heavy on the chips on this tank because, I don't know, I just kind of want to. I thought that a heavily chipped Abrams might look pretty cool because of all of the sharp angles. Um, so yeah, this is purely a personal preference on how much I'm doing this. I also wanted to practice, uh, and I understand if you would rather leave it a little bit cleaner. Overall, I am rather happy with this chipping effect, I'd say. And now I'm going to be moving on to taking some gunmetal gray and adding metallic highlights to all exposed metal, i.e. machine guns and the cables, as well as some of the larger chips. We'll get just a tiny speck of it. Really don't go overboard with this. A little goes a very, very long way. Um, and there you have it. That's all on the chipping. And I will now be moving on to just painting some of the smaller details. These are just the straps over the bustle rack that I will be painting a dark brown. Um, yep, alright. That's one of the last details that really needs to get hit. I didn't add a ton to this tank, so it's mostly just base color. Now I'm going to be, for the just about the final step, I'm going to be taking a airbrush, very light ivory color, and I'm going to be spraying a coat of dust on, bind all the colors together, very, very, very light. Um, you can go a little heavier near the bottom, and there you have it. That is my finished M1A1HA Abrams. I am pretty happy with the paint job on this. Lots of practice chipping, um, and this is really my first time doing a real post shading job, so I'm happy with it overall, especially for how much I disliked building that kit. Um, and yeah, uh, again, wouldn't don't love this kit, but I was pretty happy with how this one eventually turned out. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.